Hello, I'm sitting outside today to give this short message. I hope that you guys are having a good day today, and I thank you for getting on here and caring about your child and your students enough to really know what's going on in the student ministry and to take a look at what they're learning about and hopefully to discuss it with them. This was about divorce, marriage, and adultery because it didn't apply to the students as much. The immediately, I wanted to get across to the students the seriousness of marriage. Jesus says a lot here, and you'll be able to look it up online on the blog if you're looking for more information of what they learned. He relates adultery to divorce in this passage, and it really is part two of Jesus' discussion on adultery. And so if you look at Matthew 5:31 to 32, I began by talking about God hating divorce in Malachi 2:16 as kind of an opening to help them to understand that marriage is a good thing and marriage is for life. And that commitment is a good thing. It's God honoring, and marriage is for life. And so we talked about divorce. We talked about marriage being a forever commitment. And breaking of it, Jesus equates here as being an act of adultery. He does give an exception to this. The exception Jesus gives here is an act of adultery on the other partner, so they're cheating, nullifies the covenant made between the man and the woman. But we didn't really discuss that a whole lot. We really, like I said, went into talking about this commitment. And we talked about the commitment of marriage, how in Jesus' day it was taught that it was okay to divorce for even insignificant reasons. And so the people could get a divorce. And it's much like today where you can get online and get a cheap divorce, really because you didn't like the other person anymore, you'd fallen out of love. Those sorts of things are not things that are allowed in Scripture for divorce. It really is. The commitment level of marriage is much greater. I think Disney gets it wrong. Disney gets it way wrong. When they don't go into that sort of detail about marriage, they make love look like the only important thing that comes out of love is that moment that carries you to the aisle, and it doesn't go into detail about the beauty of the long-term committed relationship, the beauty of a husband and wife who've been together for 60 years, living and all of the hard struggles in life together, and then passing away, sometimes one right after another. And it really doesn't delve into that kind of an issue. And I think Disney has really ruined a lot of our views on what love and marriage are supposed to be about. Now, I gave the example of B.B. Warfield. He married his wife, and on their engagement, actually, while they were engaged, not when they were engaged, on their honeymoon, on their honeymoon, they actually went on a European vacation. They both were kind of well-to-do enough that they could go on a vacation. While they were there on their honeymoon, there was a lightning storm, and they got caught in the lightning storm, and there wasn't any physical damage done as far as their bodies weren't harmed. It didn't seem like it anyway when you read the story, but it did cause a sort of shock to her system that stayed with her for the rest of the days. In fact, she was essentially homebound the rest of her days and had to be taken care of by her husband, but he did so gladly. He stayed with her for the rest of her life. He committed to her, and not only did he commit to her, he limited his work schedule so that he would be able to be with her. He didn't travel much. He didn't do those sorts of things. He wrote a lot. You can still read from his works today. He's B.B. Warfield. And from 1847 to 1915, when she passed, he took care of her. And it was very well noted by others who were at the University of Princeton where he taught. It was very well noted by them that he took care of her. He was kind to her. He loved her. He was gentle with her. He had committed to her. And that's the type of commitment we make when we get married. The other thing we saw was that marriage is forever. Genesis 2:24, we hold fast to our wife. It doesn't say that you are with her for a moment and when you fall out of love, it's okay to get rid of her. That's not at all what he says here. He says something quite different. He says that we are to hold fast to our wife, and Jesus is here pointing out, or that was in Genesis, but Jesus is here kind of referencing that idea that we stay with our spouse, that we are with them. we live in a culture where we can just dump our spouse and get rid of our spouse for any reason whatsoever. It's legal, it's okay to do those things, and Jesus is really pointing out the commitment of marriage. And the thing that I really was stressing throughout this message with our students was the commitment to be made. We need to be people who are working toward these sorts of characteristics, who are people who are of good Christian character, who can have this sort of steadfast love for one another, who can commit in marriage and commit for the long term. We need to develop those characteristics with ourselves to be the type of people who can commit to something like this for the rest of our lives. We also need to look for people who will do likewise. Well, the biggest stipulation in Scripture toward who a person is supposed to marry is that they are supposed to be a believer like you. If you're a Christian, you're supposed to marry a Christian. And then you need to be looking for someone who can fulfill the roles of marriage in a long-term way. And you don't need to settle for someone who's going to dump you whenever they change their mind. And so we really talked about the commitment of marriage and developing those characteristics within ourselves. I hope that this is something that you can have a good conversation with your child about. I hope that it really works out. And I thank you for getting on here and watching this video.